A Listeria recall can empty an entire grocery category overnight. And this video explains how that happens and why the effects spread so fast. A single positive test result inside one facility can set off a chain reaction that removes millions of pounds of food from shelves across the country within hours. On a normal weekday morning, a grocery store deli counter looks stable and predictable. Sliced meats are stacked neatly, prepared salads sit behind glass, and ready-to-eat meals rotate steadily through refrigerated cases. Within a day, that same counter can be shut down completely, shelves stripped bare, and employees scrubbing equipment with disinfectants strong enough to corrode metal. The change looks sudden, but the system behind it moves even faster than it appears. Listeria monocytogenes is the reason. Unlike many other foodborne pathogens, this bacterium does not slow down in the cold. Refrigeration, which protects most foods by suppressing bacterial growth, does not stop Listeria at all. It continues to survive, and in some cases multiply, at temperatures where other bacteria fail. That single characteristic makes it uniquely dangerous in a food system built around refrigeration. In documented cases, Listeria has persisted inside food processing facilities for years. It hides in drains, equipment seams, floor cracks, and hard-to-clean machinery, forming biofilms that resist normal sanitation. Once established, it can contaminate products intermittently, which means a facility can pass inspections and still release contaminated food weeks or months later. The health consequences explain why regulators and retailers react so aggressively. Each year in the United States, roughly 1,600 people contract listeriosis, according to CDC surveillance data. The number of cases is relatively small compared to Salmonella, but the severity is far higher. About 1 in 5 infected people die, and the risk concentrates among pregnant women, newborns, older adults, and people with weakened immune systems. When public health labs confirm Listeria through whole genome sequencing, officials prepare for hospitalizations and fatalities, not just stomach illness. That risk became visible again during the Boar's Deli meat outbreak in 2024. Investigators noticed a cluster of listeriosis cases among elderly patients, many of whom reported eating liverwurst. That detail stood out because liverwurst consumption skews heavily toward older adults. Testing eventually traced the contamination back to Boar's products produced at the company's Jarratt, Virginia facility. The initial recall announced on July 26, 2024, covered just over 200,000 pounds of product. Within days, the scope expanded dramatically. More than 7 million pounds of deli meats were recalled after investigators determined that contamination could not be isolated to a single product line. Listeria had likely spread through shared equipment, drains, and processing areas across the facility. Inspection reports later revealed the conditions that allowed the bacteria to persist. USDA inspectors documented dozens of violations over time, including mold, insects, pooled liquids, and meat residue buildup inside equipment. These findings had been recorded repeatedly, yet production continued. When those reports became public, they raised questions about enforcement, oversight, and the limits of inspection systems that rely on periodic checks rather than continuous monitoring. Once a recall is announced, grocery stores move quickly. Employees can remove affected products from shelves in hours, sometimes faster. The response often goes beyond what regulators require. Retailers frequently pull entire product lines from the same manufacturer, even if only one item tested positive. This is not panic or overreaction. It reflects how consumers respond to food safety events. Survey data shows that after a major recall, many shoppers permanently change brands. Some avoid the specific product, while others avoid the manufacturer entirely. Retailers understand that trust collapses faster than supply chains can recover. Removing everything associated with a contaminated brand limits reputational damage and reduces liability. The ripple effects can extend far beyond one company. In October 2024, Brucepac recalled nearly 12 million pounds of ready-to-eat meat and poultry products due to potential Listeria contamination. Those products were sold under dozens of brand names at major retailers nationwide. Tracking them required identifying distribution paths, private label relationships, and secondary suppliers. A single recall notice triggered removals across hundreds of stores. Prepared foods introduce even more complexity. In 2025, a multi-state Listeria outbreak linked to prepared pasta products resulted in at least 6 deaths and more than 24 hospitalizations, according to CDC and FDA reporting. The affected items included refrigerated and frozen pasta meals, sold both prepackaged and by weight at deli counters across multiple chains. Some products carried best buy dates extending into 2027, which meant contaminated food could remain in home freezers long after the recall was announced. This timing gap highlights a core problem in food safety: detection lags behind distribution. Laboratory confirmation can take days, and during that window, products continue moving through warehouses, trucks, stores, and homes. By the time officials identify a contamination source, millions of pounds of food may already be dispersed nationwide. Whole genome sequencing has shortened outbreak detection timelines dramatically. What once took more than a month can now happen in a couple of weeks, sometimes faster when clusters appear. Systems like PulseNet allow public health labs to connect cases across states using genetic fingerprints of pathogens. That speed saves lives, but it also means recalls now surface when far more product is already in circulation. The economic impact of these events is severe. Industry estimates place the average direct cost of a food recall around $10 million, covering retrieval, disposal, and logistics. The indirect costs often exceed that figure. Share prices drop, insurance premiums rise, and long-term brand damage can erase years of growth. Studies of meat and poultry recalls show losses exceeding $100 million in shareholder value within days of announcement. Food manufacturers respond by investing heavily in prevention. Environmental monitoring programs, redesigned facilities, continuous sampling, and specialized sanitation teams are now standard in high-risk categories. These systems are expensive, but the alternative is existential risk. A single recall can end a brand. Despite these investments, Listeria remains difficult to eliminate. Its ability to survive in cold, wet environments means zero-risk production is not achievable. Facilities manage risk rather than eliminate it entirely, and regulators accept that reality while enforcing thresholds and response protocols. Oversight itself has limits. FDA inspections typically occur every 3 to 5 years for facilities under its jurisdiction. USDA facilities receive more frequent oversight, but resource constraints and reliance on documentation can allow problems to persist between inspections. Investigations following recent outbreaks have prompted internal reviews and calls for stronger enforcement, but structural challenges remain. Retailers sit at the downstream end of this system. When a recall hits, they act as first responders. They pull products, notify customers, block reorders, and adjust layouts overnight. entire categories can disappear temporarily, not because food vanished, but because uncertainty makes selling it too risky. For shoppers, the effect feels sudden and confusing. A familiar item disappears. A whole shelf goes empty. Signs appear with brief explanations that do not convey the scale of what just happened upstream. What looks like scarcity is often caution moving at full speed. Consumer demand continues to push the system toward higher risk categories. Ready-to-eat foods, prepared meals, deli items, and minimally processed products are growing segments of grocery sales. These foods save time, but they also provide ideal conditions for Listeria if contamination occurs. Convenience and safety remain in tension. The next recall will not be unusual. It will follow the same pattern: detection, confirmation, expansion, removal. The 24 hours after a positive test often determine whether an outbreak stays contained or spreads nationally. With Listeria, those hours matter more than with almost any other pathogen. What empties shelves overnight is not panic, incompetence, or overreaction. It is a system designed to act fast once uncertainty crosses a threshold. That speed protects consumers, even when it disrupts access and creates visible gaps. When a category disappears, it reflects the collision between a persistent bacterium and a supply chain built for efficiency rather than isolation. Until food production changes at a structural level, recalls will remain a visible reminder that safety, speed, and scale do not always align. What happens overnight when Listeria strikes is not just about removing food. It is about how modern grocery systems respond when risk outweighs availability, and why empty shelves are sometimes the safest outcome possible.